Hi, everybody. Another Thursday night. Let's see, just get rid of that. Great. I have a couple of questions. I'm not sure how long they'll last. And they're both, for some strange reason, on the biblical side of things. So remember, keep in mind, many stories that we have out of the Bible are very metaphorical. And it is, uh, let's say, a matter of taste and a matter of bias, how you see these things. So uh, just here we go. Give it a try. This one is from Bronwyn Rees in Aylmer. I think it's called Gatineau now. She says, this verse from the Gospel of John, which is, okay, in always puzzles me. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Actually, it's out of Genesis, out of the Torah. And anyway, just so you know. And so I recently did also it's out of John too, I think. So I recently did a bit of research and came across the interesting article, which I thought was fascinating. I can cut it out and paste it into a document if you prefer. It's a bit long to copy into the email, so I'm just sending the link. I did not look at the link. So besides the creation story, I'm wondering how this shows up energetically as a dynamic of growth. Or am I way off here? Until I read the article, giving an interpretation of it, I had been wondering about it in terms of energy and frequency. Yeah, I can understand why anybody would wonder about it, actually, in terms of energy and frequency, and are becoming aware of changes in frequency as a process of consciousness. It has become a mantra for me in meditation, so perhaps the meaning isn't that important, and it's just frequency and the notes of the words that matter. What really matters is what you think of them and how you engage with them. And it's fine, which way you come up with Brahman. Here's just another way to come up with it. And remember, these are metaphors. I'm inclined to think of this one in the same terms as the Tower of Babel, the creation story, Adam and Eve's story, and Jacob's ladder. All three of these engagements are emphasizing the possibility that we have a higher link with another state. We are a part of a higher link with another state. And that concept of word is related to a vibration, from my perspective. And a breath flow, which we see in the Adam and Eve or creation story. We also see it in the Hindu background and breath in a lot of the other traditional backgrounds as well, indicating that there is a higher state flow that is engaging with these states. And of course, the bias of these states is as we gain access to those states, then we become involved with another state. And our personality bias is so strong on these planes that then we think we're valuable and important because we have this link. That link is not meant to be there to indicate superiority. It's meant to be there to enable others so that they can be helpful in enabling others. It's very interesting how we often interpret these kinds of things. And we do the interpretations basically that way because we're human beings and we want to be valued in that way, or paid attention to, or loved somehow. And competition for that love is, on these levels, is fierce in relationship to concepts of tribe, religious backgrounds, nations, all the rest of it, groups of people, all that sort of thing. And in fact, it's not meant to be that way, from my perspective. So in this particular orientation, yeah, I think I agree that it's very difficult to explain a flow of loving energy through a person in a completely quiet and silent manner. Peaceful beyond belief, but creative within the sense of a relationship of inner expression, where your external, let's say, vibratory batteries that you call personality are basically, in a kind of a way, secondary. In the Tower of Babel, I think that was a metaphor to warn us about engaging, coming together, and trying to be a God that is superior over others. I think that was a major, major way of showing us that if we do that kind of thing, if we come together to do that kind of thing, we will lose contact with remembering how to speak the same language was the metaphor, but how to speak the language of love, how to engage with it and give that to each other, to help another to be as able as you are, one could say. And this is, I would honestly say, hardly ever considered that way, although there may be some who do. I don't know. Creation, sir, was the same kind of thing, where there was a vibration, the word or the breath, vibration entered into clay or those from earth. It's a double metaphor. Clay, and made alive. Life meant unity with the highest of states, and a conscious unity with the highest of states. In all forms, it was in the animals, and then it was in Adam, it was in Eve, it was in that so-called lowly snake, which was another metaphorical symbol of relationship with an engagement from one level to another. Snake standing on its tail. Used often in the Hindu, Buddhist, and Taoist background, and with a little thought, anyone who's experienced energy often or sometimes can either perceive it from coming down in them or coming up into another state. And both of those symbolic expressions of energy or breath or the word, the expression of an interaction with the breath of a higher state or the flow of a higher state. We forget that in the beginnings of language, there were many intonations that were, we often laugh, ugh, ugh, ugh. And finally we said, ugh must be yes. We cultivated all kinds of expressions in the attempt to communicate with each other. So we forget that we have to use breath for communication. We don't even think of it, to express words, to use words. And therefore, word was a very good metaphor for the expression of a creative breath that was helpful in engaging with higher states. That was used a lot in terms of vibration. Breath is vibration, word vibration. Your interaction with people, the words you use, the intensity, rather than frequency, but the intensity you use in relationship to what you're expressing and how you're expressing things. Also has to do with an individual, millions of biased individuals who interpret. There is a reflex, and it's called interpretation, where you interpret, you communicate your interpretation to yourself. And that is a flow of the breath of a truth biased within you. It's a strange way to engage, but nonetheless. Then finally, we have Jacob's ladder, and it's really interesting. This guy has a dream. He is very intent on being engaged with a higher state, but he has a dream. And this dream, he walks up a ladder. As we talk about the Kabbalah being a ladder, as we talk about the chakras being a ladder. Each of these interact with each other. And you can be right up you can be on a base step of the ladder, the first step of the ladder, but link up to a high state. Second step, high state, third step, high state. We don't think that way. We say, oh, they're going to row of beads. We get up there, and now we're valuable and important. That is still a bias. That's your personality playing games with you. At some state of that higher level, the personality becomes a tool, a constructed form that can be used by a higher state as that personality can handle, being able to handle the word, the flow of that which comes from a state beyond our understanding. Implication is that our biases can't figure it out. But nonetheless, okay, they were aware that there were angelic possibilities. So he goes up there, up this ladder. He's taken up the ladder because the bias is asleep. It's not going to take credit for this. It's not going to be important because of it. So he is taken up the ladder. The ladder being taken up, he is part of the word, the flow that helps him, because those from above come down to help him climb the ladder, implying that the personality cannot, of itself, cannot climb that ladder. And remember, the Tower of Babel says, this biased personality thing, if you start doing it this way and then start using that energy to manipulate other people to get your way, it will be taken away from you. Because that is not a loving engagement. That is not the flow of the word, that higher flow that renders unto you an ability that might be helpful to you and to others. I told you this was my view of this. So what I said here, when biases are asleep, less fearful of being not used to preserve its own self-interest, or biases about what is more true, more real than anybody else's version, all this kind of thing, then you can be taken upward to show what can eventually happen, and this is what happened with Jacob, when the outside bias and outside imagination, because it's not real that you are God, that higher state, you are acting like that. So it's a fiction. So in and through all of this orientation, what was trying to be expressed here was using the word of God, this word of God, because we don't know what else to call it. So using this flow, or that flow was God, and the flow is God. It's the one and the same, but from my point of view, it's a metaphorical orientation. If you have a belief within that, and that makes you feel as if there is something in it, the same as any vibratory expression that you believe in, that exudes a sense of calm inside yourself because of your belief. Yes, it's true, but also because it settles you somehow. Then use it as a mantra, because it will be helpful to you, because it reminds you of a sense of well-being. And often, if you think about this, our imagination gets overworked when we have experiences. We somehow think that it's a credit, and those who don't, not a credit. And that is the way of this bias orientation that we have, so that we feel less uncomfortable in how valued we are, either inside or out, by others or ourselves. In fact, if no one values you at all, to be honest, and that flow is riding in you, the flow is valuing you. So life itself is precious, because that is a life flow, and it enables you to move on, move forward. I find it very fascinating. I don't know if anybody else does, and I'm sure you do, that these fundamental things that we have learned as children and as adults, when we touch on them, there's something in them. If a person tells you they really love you, and you have a vulnerable moment where you can actually take that in, that moment is of great value to you, and great value to the other if they're being sincere. What happens after that? Who knows? But in that moment, that engagement with caring touches you deep down inside, and is kind of reminiscent of an engagement with, as these metaphors show, or stories or fables, whatever you want to call them, or somebody said myths of some kind. Well, yeah, okay, whatever. These are words we use to feel comfortable with whatever our personality can handle. The same is true of love. We have tremendous difficulty anticipating what that sensation would be. So we have it in relationship to other things. I'm talking of the sensation of engaging with that level of loving 24/7. Oh, I've heard people say that they have it all the time. And I say, oh, because if you had it all the time, I know that some levels of that will not allow you to even function because it's just too much for your personality to handle. But you can have a sensation of love in you that you can handle. But when you have that, it opens you to an engagement inside. I will call it the heart center. Often it's the solar plexus, but I'll call it the heart center. So that when another person is sincere about caring for you, they don't have to open their mouth. It will transmit to you and you'll notice it inside. Now, when you do notice that, you will add to that the regulation system of your biased engagement with your personality to assess what that really is and how it relates to you. And in that, you will be protecting you and your trust levels so that you can actually move it so that you can handle it and still call it love, or you may not be able to call it that. You might call it something else. Love is quite an impressive thing, and it's profound in itself. It makes you speechless, primarily because you don't want to interrupt it, not because you're shy. You don't want to interrupt it. And one word out of that regulating construct that we all have, and you will affect it. So these levels of engagement are easily spoken when they're written on a page, but not easily digested in the experience of how you can handle it. Often it comes in ways to show you how you are inside and where you can handle things. It's quite revealing and very annoying. But if you can grab onto a sense of humor and just for a second or two say, oh my God, that's about all I can handle. And you're not really speaking to God at the time, I suppose, but you're speaking to you. Then at least you have a level of honesty going on inside yourself. And you're starting to recognize that this is not just an intellectual thing, not just an emotional thing either, not just a dialogue, but a full engagement with something that goes way beyond how we normally talk about our excerpts of how love is. But don't lose a single one of those, because at least they're pieces and parts of that concept or that relationship that you can handle. And each little moment of broadening inside about that level of loving, and it is really valuable to us individually, whatever that may be. And if by some instance someone can handle more? Yes, at first they'll say, they'll ignore everything and say, I can handle more love than anybody else, or whatever, however they deal with it. But within them, they'll begin to know that there is a level of loving they can handle. And the bias construction, our personalities, are slowly moving to handle more. Being honest with that is not easy because of our traditional way of engaging with each other about this. I can do this better. This is more like, this is right. This is down. This is whatever. It's because of that traditional nature that we're a part of that makes it so difficult to let go inside and allow ourselves to open more little by little. Be happy for every impact. If you're watching a television program and something touches you in it, be happy about it. My God, I can't handle that. What was that about? Why is that happening? That doesn't matter. It's a bloody program. It means nothing. What is meaningful about that link is that you touch on something inside yourself. That may be the only place you can touch deeper when you're watching something external from you. Just yet. As time goes on, maybe you can handle something deeper. It hurts sometimes. It hurts for all kinds of inner reasons that we're not even a party to. Primarily because we think we can do a lot better. And we get disappointed that we can't do as well. Or we're scared, fearful of letting go because we might be hurt in that loving process. Consider this. Something as large as a flow that can love each and every person and help them to see how they are and ask the question if that's the way they really want to be. By the experience they come up with as the right way to live life. It's a question. You live it that way. Is that how you want to do it? Because you are training internally for the ability to handle more. Love in a manner that may be different than your present biases will allow. So there's no negation in these things. Absolutely none. But there is a vibrational tenet to it. You engage every day relative to the vibrations that you believe and know you need to use to validate an image that you've already constructed that is vibrating there in you, in all of us. And we attempt, unknown to us, to maintain it. And we're not even sure what the image is. But think about every time you engage with another. If you're not vulnerable, you may not notice it. You might be vulnerable and you engage a certain way to protect yourself without even knowing that. It doesn't mean you're a bad person at all. It means you're working with a frequency that has enabled you to survive up to now. If it's like mine, it's not always pretty, but it is. And there is tomorrow and today left. little by little, an engagement with that. Hope to relate to another state. Imperfection, you will be more soft today for 3 hours. And you'll forget. And you will do you as you've done you before because you're afraid. If you don't, that's our bias. If you don't, something weird will happen to you. When all along you believed that that was the only way to do things. Because you learned that that was at least true, partly of this life, maybe from other lives, maybe not from other lives. But you're learning, not negating. But we do better at negating sometimes. It takes less effort to negate. It takes more effort to try and understand something. So none of us do it perfectly. Try and remember that when people that you care for do something that you don't agree with. You don't know why. They may or may not know either. If they have helped you touch on caring, loving to some degree, you should be thanking them. Because that degree of engagement, no matter what it is and where it was, and even if they don't do it all the time, it affected you and helped you to engage in a manner that is different than the ways and means that you needed to gain access to a zone, you might call it comfort, a zone where you could survive comfortably within yourself. They touched that for you, and they may have affected it to make it softer. It's a difficult one to understand when you're living life day to day. Remember, you also may have affected other people in a loving manner. And maybe at that point you didn't even know it. How you acted in relationship to someone else, maybe. Someone saw that and saw that piece for a second or two. And they knew you in a different place than they normally did know you. And you affected their life. You touched them in that loving second or two when you were engaging with somebody else, not them. You made them remember a second or two. And maybe they did that to somebody else. We touch people in many different ways. They're not always verbalizations. In this world of higher state, there's basically no communication by voice, except to help you understand something. Because the transmission is there. The flow, I'll call it flow. The expression of a word. The breath of tremendous love. Creating something that would be helpful to others. In our world, to remind us that we have that in us somewhere, someplace. You can have a love for a piece of wood. That may inspire somebody else. They see some people call it passion. I would call it your love for creating something. It's not what you say about it that will be important. It's them watching you, giving you into that wood, the breath of your transmission into that piece of wood, the joy that it gives you, the peace that may remain in there, in that moment of creation that you have for something that you're working with. It could be the simplest thing. It could be the most complex thing. It could be an idea. Every day we express ourselves in some way. And that engages with the collective. All of us are touched by it. Seems like a big, awfully big picture. But nonetheless, if these words are real and true, an engagement at that level means your personality bias, you will forget it. It will sleep. And that other state will be helpful where it can. And that was the old traditions. And then you will shift back and go back into your bias. That was called mediumship in the old traditions, in the old prophets, where the spleen was affected, two centers in the spleen, where the personality, the root gonad and solar plexus, and wherever it had gone in that individual was quieted down, and a speaking could occur through a person who was not conscious. If you become conscious of that flow with your biases still intact, and some of you are, you then have been given the opportunity to be conscious of that flow and to be helpful to you. Now you've given a child that you have an input to in the helping of you to remain conscious while helping your biases to grow from what has been before, just ever so slightly, into something broader, little at a time. This is not a week's course in something or other, or a month's, or years. This is an engagement which continues on, lifetime to lifetime, if indeed you believe in that sort of stuff. There is a level of trust in there from a higher state. Our trust level takes a little longer, perhaps. I hope that helped a little bit, Bronwyn. And the next one is from Della. I think she's in Maryland right now. I have been listening to Wayne Dyer, she says, and he mentioned the book, The I Am Discourses by Saint Germain. It turns out I may have Mary O'Neill's copy. Mary passed away a little while back. So I picked it up and started reading. He mentions many different I am phrases to ask for help for ourselves. The one I'm curious about so far is I am the resurrection and the life. This is a Christian orientation. But the concept itself is not only Christian. This is really interesting. Eastern, tremendous. They have this kind of idea. I heard this phrase a lot going to church, but I never reflected on it. And this was a Catholic church. I have been, and by the way, it's in other churches too. I have been doing a life map over my head and using the phrase repeatedly. It feels like asking for transmutation and healing. I think she's got it right there. But I was wondering if you could speak about it just a little bit to help with some insight, understanding, and maybe broaden the perception. This, of course, again, is metaphorical. These words are meant to give an idea, present an idea based on an experience that relates to individuals or an individual. Think of it this way. I am the resurrection and the life. If you look at the Christian orientation, there is a conscious link. This is what he's talking about. I am the resurrection. I have become conscious, and it is conscious that I'm conscious. And while I am standing and engaging, the transmission from it will operate through that individual, Jesus in this particular case, through them to be of help to others in relationship to existence called life. And that life is higher state linking consciously at a various levels higher than what we can attain very well. This means literally that an engagement with these states at a higher level is an individual acting like a pillar of transmission to affect other people so they could be like him. Now that I know is not a belief system. But they engage with higher states through him, meaning if you engage this way with him, the energy that he is and he's aware of and flows through him will flow through you. That's the promise. The promise relates to an engagement with a higher state or climbing the ladder. And in this case, Adam Kadmon, or the Messiah, or this gentleman, Jesus, that was taught to all Christians as the Messiah, then means you have climbed all of the ladders, not only the first ladder route all the way through up to the top, but the second all the way to the top, the third all the way to the top, and back down to the bottom, and the heart center up to the top and bottom. And your influence with every single step in every single ladder, it means you can climb from the base orientation of existence here on the coarser levels still be engaged at that higher state, and then come in and through and engage at this state for the betterment of others. So this, of course, would be misunderstood by all of us, very likely, if we lived at that time, and still is. In the Eastern orientations, if you become engaged with all of those states, your job is to, if you are here on these planes, is to help others. It's truly a service orientation. Help others, meaning helping others to be open inside so that they can engage with that highest of states as well. Kind of a different way of understanding a relationship with growing. We have to be a little careful on these levels of our personal traditional biases with every belief system, because we are at the center of these traditional belief systems. Our way is better than your way, this way is better than that way, all the rest of that. That does not exist at that other level. And in fact, even I think, if I'm not mistaken, this particular individual, Jesus said something like, the kingdom of heaven has many mansions, many belief systems. And he said, if I tell you that, if it were different, those are not his words. You have to look that up for yourself. And because these things are pivotal, but we don't pay very much attention to them, it tells us that we're still learning and trying to understand the metaphorical hints that we have been given in a manner that is inclusive of everyone rather than exclusive from others. And this is very difficult for us because we're up to our neck in or maybe over our heads sometimes in how we think things have to be, because we're looking at it from this level. We're not looking at it from a higher level. And this is understandable. This is how we are. So there's no negativity attached to this. It's just we're not there to understand it deep enough so that it changes our traditional biases in relationship to our background. And it's complicated because we have to rethink a whole lot of stuff if we even consider the possibility of thinking like that. So I'll just see if I left anything out here. So the Garden of Eden state, this very high state, was energized and would be energized as a stage by that breath once again, that sort of I am breath, or the breath that's operating through this individual for the purpose of enabling others and helping others to grow as well. You might consider the day of Pentecost in that somehow, because that was a time when certain people were chosen to be helpers of that transmission. It wasn't about the healing of bodies. It was more about the healing of souls. In other words, the healing of that which was within, so we could link up with that level of love that was tremendously unsettling at these planes. So you could say maybe the body has to be helped, and maybe the emotions have to be helped, maybe the mind has to be helped, and the overall way of seeing the world, maybe. But it doesn't stop us from being curious and explorative and trying to understand the whole of the universe. This just means that we have to spend a little bit of time trying to understand something deeper than us. Possibly. You think about that. The difference between a direct occurrence and a biased personalization, direct occurrence of that flow, is the flow itself is in charge, not the personal. This is a big deal. The I am is the flow. That was a catchphrase, one could say. Higher state energy has found a personality that is open to letting go of all within that preserves its biases, its value, importance, and interacts only as a tool for a very high state of existence and purposes that relate to it, not relating to us. Well, still have to eat. That relates to us. Still have to water the mind, engage with the emotions, engage with the form, keep it healthy. These are things that are pretty practical if you look at them honestly. If it just becomes a big dialogue, then you don't pull yourself to a point where you recognize the vulnerability that you live in, the framework, the personality structure, the physical, the emotional, the mental structures, and how you think and how you must think. Otherwise, somehow, vulnerability is too much to handle in some way. Perhaps we're not as ready for this as we think, but growing a little at a time, finding balance each time we grow is helpful. Well, these are two interesting questions. I hope I helped a little bit with it. Remember, food for thought. Think about these things. Be curious about them and recognize to some extent, a little bit, how much real caring you can take from others. Because there are twisted views of how to love and what love is and all the rest of it. Nah, let's call them biased. Do you have one? I probably have one too. In the meantime, little by little, we can try to understand more, a little better. I think we're going to meditate right now. And I wish you well. I think we're going to play some of Daniel Bay's music. So I wish you all well, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. And I'm looking forward to the next time. We do need more questions, so I wish you well. Take care. we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding. And have a good evening.